Hello and good day, everyone. Today it's our third episode, and I'm really excited to have today Mish Middelmann for the third time in our episodes, talking about systemic leadership. And today you have this amazing coming out of the bloom, ghosts in organizations. And I would like to first welcome you, Mish, with this shiny energy that you're coming in.
Thank you. I mean, ghosts, I should perhaps put a sheet over me or something to look like a ghost. But yeah, and as you mentioned, Halloween just passed in North America, which was all about ghosts as well. So ghosts are alive in our
Yeah.
lives, one way or another. And I'm glad to be flesh and blood and to be with you, Sharaf.
Thank you, Mish. And actually, it's really a pleasure, to come and here bringing in, all the we don't want to scare the out of anyone,
Yes, yes.
and we need to actually talk about, ghosts here, like things that are in organizations that we don't really that we really don't want to acknowledge or don't need to come near or just mention, So, how do you define ghosts from your perspective? How do you see ghosts?
For me, it's a person or a group or an influence that is not physically visible, but is still influencing the air that we breathe and the decisions that we make and the culture of the organization. So, ghost in the sense that the physical presence is no longer what it used to be, or maybe it never was physically present, but it's still like the wind that blows through the organization and therefore affects everyone.
Wow, it's that's brilliant. How you articulate it. It's really brilliant. How you bring it like into life. It really affects everyone, and actually, in a way, everybody don't want to speak about it, but it impacts their behavior. So, sorry, I have to
There's even a
acknowledge.
ghost on
I
the,
have to
not a
acknowledge.
ghost, but a loud person on our call that's not visible. And so welcome. And I mean, a great example that off camera somebody can be screaming
Yeah.
and it influences us, it's just how life goes. And it's perhaps good to start with the more personal aspects of ghosts. So there are the most obvious sort of ghost is like the previous CEO,
Mm.
who might be a benevolent ghost, as in, you know, everyone looks at you, Sharaf, and says, but your predecessor was nicer than you or me. Or it might be the opposite of like, thank you, Sharaf. Thank you, Mish, for coming. You're nicer than the old CEO. Um, I worked quite a lot in an organization where it wasn't the CEO, it was somebody who was known as the Queen. And she didn't have a big position in the organization, but she was the kind one. She was the one who, like a little card or a flower would appear on your desk the day it was your birthday. And everybody loved that. And when she retired, that ghost was huge. Like, why doesn't anyone care for us anymore now? The Queen has gone. Nobody cares for us. So those are some of the personal ghosts that, yeah, anybody listening, I mean, we'd love to hear your stories. Feel free to pop your messages in about what's it like for you
You,
with ghosts.
well, actually, that's a very good question here, and you made me reflect on many things that were unspoken in the organization. In many organizations, we had, but it created many behaviors, and nobody wants to speak truly about it. Like for instance, there's maybe something in the culture that is religiously biased.
Right.
To a certain kind of religious spectrum, that this is where we can actually feel the culture fit, our culture fit comes in, and we can actually accept people in this range of
Yes.
the belief spectrum or something like this, or practice spectrum or something like this,
Right.
or maybe a relation of the scale of conservatism versus liberalism, this kind of
Yes.
personal attitudes towards others, maybe openness, extroversion, and introversion. Sometimes it comes in like, being totally introvert and just being in your own, or maybe connecting with others. Sometimes this is shamed or this shamed, but nobody speaks about it. It's unspoken. Nobody likes
It's
to
sort
see
of,
that it's personal.
yes,
or personal preferences, on how
Yes, the
people.
more sort of collective ghost energies that
Yes.
are playing out in an organization, and also there are other things that I think are very relevant in 2021, 2022. Like, to me, there's the ghost of the way we used to do business before the pandemic.
Wow.
So it's like our customers used to be just here. We used to meet in person. These products and services used to sell very well. It used to be easy to meet all of us in person, or it used to be easy to reward our people by sending them on a nice tourist experience. And all of those things are pretty much ghosts right now in most parts of the world. I mean, they're little opportunities for in-person meeting in some parts of the world, particularly in China, actually, but not that many other places. Beginning in the US, I think, as well, that you can do more stuff in person. But to me, that's a potent ghost of like remembering how it used to be and wishing it could be so.
Yeah. And that's very true, and I believe that it's very relevant also, even people who are sometimes resilient enough to actually to have this a massive success. The COVID, when it came, it actually contributed to more business to some, some business lines or something like
Yes,
this. And the beginning of the pandemic, they took like, a big market share, and they actually succeeded. They thought that it will continue like this. And when 2021 came, after 1 year or something, everything was started to be normalizing. They started thinking their previous positions. They cannot accept shrinking down again, as if they have to be always in this hype,
right,
this, this
right.
growth. And it was not normal. It was just,
And that for me says to us that these ghosts, they're real, they influence us, and we should get to know them. You mentioned some that are difficult to talk about, and I know we're going there, but I just want to say, with these that are not so sort of charged, but they're nonetheless potent, the basic approach I want to suggest is get to know the ghost. Talk about it. Talk about, what do you miss about the old CEO? What do you regret about the loss of the kind person who left the office? What are you glad to see about the troublemaker who's left? Those would be the individual ghosts. And as you said, what about the ghosts of the way we did business before the pandemic, or the ghost of the boost we got when we had a great pandemic product or service that got us really up high and it's now shrinking again? To me, we have to talk about those things. And part of the skill of the leader, the systemic leader, is to make the invisible visible, actually, and to name it when we're saying, when you can see people are thinking, oh, I wish the old CEO was here, or I wish we could go back to the pre-pandemic days. It's like the systemic leader needs to say, that's a kind of a ghost. Let's just talk about it. What do we, and my big thing, my core point to you all is, talk about what you love about the ghost and talk about what you hate about the ghost. Usually one of those is hard to say. It's easy to talk about the troublemaker and what a relief it is that they've gone, or the disliked CEO. It's hard to talk about the things you disliked about the CEO that everyone loved, or the things about meeting in person that you actually didn't like. Those are all kind of weird, but it's, to me, the counterintuitive thing is the one that really helps your people to adapt, is if you can bring the ghost out, look at it from all sides. What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? What voices does it speak with? And how can we engage with it?
yeah. You recall this 90s movie, and the scary, or something called Scary Movie or something, when this ghost came up, you'll hear out WhatsApp, this
Yeah,
you
yeah,
recall
yeah, yeah. And I mean,
and this is how it will be,
yeah, Yes, and when we were teenagers, we went to the movies with somebody that we wanted to get close to,
Yes.
because we sat together in fear. Maybe we get to put our arms around them, or they put their arms around us, or they kind of cuddle up to us.
Yeah.
I'm basically saying a similar dynamic without the personal romance involved. Similar dynamic happens in business systems. That if we face those fears together, it enables us to engage with each other. And out of that comes the innovation.
Wow, that's absolutely articulate. Can you please come back again with with this concept? Elaborate more about it.
So it's that because this is about systemic leadership, right?
Yes.
So what we've discussed is in general, every organization is awash with ghosts of memories of individual people, political, religious, emotional, racial perspectives, biases, preferences are flowing through the system, and the business cycles are also flowing through, and the economic cycles. That's the landscape. There are ghosts everywhere. The natural human behavior is to kind of just sort of push them aside and try to get on with your job. If I'm your employee, I just want to do my job. Don't talk to me about ghosts. Just let me do my job. And the point I'm making is that's a short-sighted approach because it doesn't bring innovation. And it tends to divide your people because each one's in their own cultural, religious, gender, and personal perspectives on those individual ghosts. They're in their own little box. And that doesn't build collaboration. That doesn't build systemic productivity in the organization. So to me, a lot of the leader's job is to build courage and some skill to talk about these difficult subjects. And it's useful to start by talking about these individual ghosts. Like, let's remember the old CEO. What did we love about them? What did we hate about them? Let's remember the troublemaker. What did we hate about them? And what did we perversely love about them? And it's also easier to go into the more direct business stuff. What was it like? What have we gained from the pandemic? What have we lost with the pandemic? What else needs to become a ghost in our business? Maybe there's something we're hanging on to that in fact should be a ghost along with the old CEO and the pre-pandemic era and all of that. So for me, that's our kind of grounding place, is be brave, teach your people to be brave, find a way of having difficult conversations that doesn't. And that's where I think you build the skill for the stuff we're coming to next, which is even harder. You build the skill by having reasonably difficult conversations where it's okay for me to hear that you like the old CEO being quite authoritarian. And I felt crushed by that. And the next person felt inspired by that. If we can have that conversation, we've got something to stand on when we start talking about, well, how do we deal with the fact that there are racial, cultural, religious, political differences in our organization?
Mm-hmm. That's really a very tough question, because actually most of the organizations shame politics, shame religious views, and in the same time they practice favoritism based on that.
Mm.
And sometimes
And
based on gender, sometimes based also on the economic, socioeconomic appearance, and
yes.
and here in the Middle East, the religious appearance may actually be something that's put in the same box.
I think so. And I mean, I've only visited the Middle East, but I'm aware that it's a very powerful force. I just want to say that as far as I can see, this is true everywhere. My wife's family of origin came from Northern Ireland. Now, in Northern Ireland, to you and me, they all look the same. They look a lot like me. They're kind of pale-skinned and they speak English and they're all the same. But she says if you go and talk to her relatives in Northern Ireland, they can see a person 100 meters away crossing the street and they'll be able to tell you whether that person is Protestant or Catholic.
Oh,
They're all
wow.
Christian, right? They're
Just
all
from
Christian.
work.
The way they walk, the way they dress, there's something in there's an instinct. And I mean, you would probably say the same about being able to pick up aspects of someone's religion, more than the obvious of the head coverings and so on, but the detail of where you are within your religion, and in areas that are more multi-religious. Like my daughter-in-law lives in an area where her family is Hindu and the neighbors are Muslim, and they kind of, they're very friendly, and they kind of, she gives them gifts on Diwali for the Hindus, the sweet gifts, and they get gifts on Eid,
Yeah.
But you know how it is between religions. It's like, there's a bit of distance, and we're a bit cautious, and as you said, that translates into business opportunities. Whoever is the sort of dominant group is the one that often people like them get the bigger opportunities. So this is a real issue for us in business, right?
Yes. Very true. Very true.
And I mean, last episode we talked about when it all doesn't work. And I mean, this is a great example, actually, you're picking up on last time, because it's like, I definitely don't have the answers to that. I only have a direction. I can see that in many parts of the world, it is dangerous to do what I advocate, which is to speak openly about these differences. And, in some, like where I live, it's often racial difference. Where you live, it's often religious. In other parts, it's both. In other parts, it's gender, it's sexuality, and depending where you are, you can lose your job, you can lose your freedom, or you can just be subtly marginalized.
Yeah.
And I want to just say that I don't have the answers, but the direction that I advocate is still this one about help the system to be as courageous as it can.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever we are now, we're probably accepting a lot of ghosts that are flying around our ears and deciding things for us, and limiting our productivity and our creativity because we're marginalizing smart people who don't belong to the right religion or gender or sexual preference or social class or whatever.
Yeah.
If we could bring them in, our businesses would do better.
Yeah. Maybe it's relating to an example of some, a client that maybe that we worked with, or you worked with, or something that maybe had this ghosts, and maybe after acknowledging the ghost and maybe understanding its nature and talking about it, any transformation happened afterwards, Mm.
Well, I haven't worked as much living where I live with religious differences because my country actually has all these problems, including the Omicron virus variant, but we are very good at religious tolerance where I live.
Yeah.
So I don't have a great example. Maybe you do, but I can share an example to do with race, which South Africa is famous for racial difficulties,
Yeah.
and an organization that I've worked with. It started with quite a lot of people who look like me being in positions of power, which has been inherited through apartheid, through racially allocated privilege. People like me have been artificially advantaged. So,
You call them Africans, right?
well, that's a subtlety. The main thing is that the white skin is the
That's it.
badge that gets
Yeah.
people advantages.
Yeah.
And those people are often a bit in denial about this, and they say, well, I'm not racist, and that's fine, but the problem is not so much are you personally racist, but how are privileges allocated in this business, and often privileges are allocated on the basis of skin. So that it's therefore a difficult topic to discuss, just like a place where religion might be difficult, or sexual preference might be difficult, where race counts for your chances in business. It's a difficult topic to discuss. And the things that we did, where we failed the first time, which I think we promised last time we talk about, was we had a conversation about race, and they were all very nice. Then they went outside at the end of the 2-hour workshop and started sticking the knives into each other outside the room.
Wow.
And that was very painful because, you know, as the leader, you try to give direction, but you don't control everything. And I've also had that experience when I was a CEO where we built a very inclusive environment, but people went home to divided suburbs and divided living areas. And then the bias went like wildfire through the different communities. Somebody from one community was mistreated, and suddenly there was anger in the system. So that's the backdrop, that there can be that kind of anger that sits in the system. One success story I had was working with a top team, and I might have mentioned this in a previous call, but it's just relevant to say again. Working with a top team where we had them rate how included they felt. So they have a leadership. Leadership are all quite privileged, right? But they had to face the scary stuff first to make it easier for everyone else to face the scary stuff. So we had them rate their own sense of includedness in their own executive team. And they were completely shocked because all the ones who rated themselves high looked like me, or at least like you. So all the people who rated themselves above 5 out of 10 were male, and they were all fairly pale. A lot of them as pale as me, and some maybe in the range between you and me. But the people who were dark and the people who were female all rated themselves less than 5. And that hit them like a tsunami, the whole lot. They all knew it in their heads, but when they saw it and they felt it in the room, I saw within weeks they were making, I mean, at the end of that session, they made concrete plans. Within weeks, they were in action around recruitment because they realized also that there were too many people who looked like me, and not enough people who looked like these marginalized groups. And within 3 months, they had recruited 3 new women and people of color into that top executive team.
Wow.
And to me, that's like, okay, for everybody else in the organization, okay, our bosses are serious. They're not just telling us to get real and to talk to each other and to grapple with the differences, in our case, racial and gender. Maybe in your case, it might be more political and religious. It's not just the bosses telling us to sort it out. It's the bosses grappling with it in their own backyard. I think that's really inspiring. I think that's systemic leadership.
Yes, it is. And actually it's really, you know, when you're speaking now, I'm just recalling some cases when actually the ghost was actually moving actually from being a technical manager towards being a people manager, you know. Sometimes
Yes.
this is something like ghosts here come in, like, you know, I'm leaving the technical career, you know. This transition is actually sometimes actually is pulling back people. And sometimes I see also some organizations where people having this kind of you know, preferences towards a certain type of culture, where
Yes.
actually the founders were actually commonly you know, had some common values, common theme
Yeah.
of, you know, and they wanted to still be in the organizations. And it is discriminative in its nature, these kind of agreements or
Yes.
consensus, because they
Yes.
were actually taken as a package, not defragmented into, you know, on what basis, what makes this a good for the culture, or what is not from the culture, it's personal preferences, and you agreed because you were friends who co-founded this organization. So
Yes.
when we had these discussions on actually understanding why are so and so and so, when they were actually leaving the organization, they felt discriminated against and they look different than you, what made them actually leave, and what did you like about them, and what do you like about your culture that
Yes.
made it preferred on these people actually feeling dissatisfied and leave the organization in the end. And this actually was a starting, you know, a start of a conversation that was really amazing, where they actually started defragmenting the factors of what is really benefiting the culture and will make it really powerful and really friendly as they started with everyone, and actually what's really personal to them, and it's about their friendship. It's not about the culture of the organization.
Yes.
Instead of
Yes.
making a cult, it's a culture. So
Yes. Yes. So in some organizations, it's like the bosses all love cycling, or the bosses all love running, or the bosses all love playing card games together at night, or drinking, or they all go to the same mosque or church or place of worship, depending on the culture. But there's something, and it's like we need to get to the stage where that is a beautiful preference and a beautiful gift to those people. But not everybody else has to be the same as that. Other people can worship in their own way. Other people can do sport in their own way. Other people can socialize in their own way. Doesn't mean that they can't contribute to the business.
yeah, and accepting in the leadership team themselves, people who are actually different, and they don't
Yes.
like, for instance, the card games or the outings or the drinking or whatever. It's okay for them to actually. It's not okay for them. It's normal practice to include them in the leadership team.
Yes.
Uh, no,
Yes.
you don't need to be friends, but you need to be very
Yes.
collaborative and feel the sense of belonging.
Right. And I'm sure for many people in the Middle East, the issue is if you're in a multinational company, they take drinking as normal, and it's like it's offensive to many people. So there you have to be willing to give up a little bit of your culture, because if you come from a sort of a Western hard drinking culture and you want to work in the Middle East, you can't do that. It's just like, no, it's not going to work, and you've got to give it up, at least while you're together in this diverse group. I wanted to circle back to, I love what you just said about that, but also you said briefly something really important, and it's like a little gem I don't want us to leave. You talked about tactical versus strategic leadership. And to me, just so many things came up as you said that, because for me, when I think of myself as a middle manager, and I think of all the middle managers I know, typically middle managers are paid to get something done. They're not paid to think as much and be as strategic. They're just like, show me the results. And so middle managers, and yet middle managers are the ones who are most connected to the ordinary people. So any middle manager listening to us is kind of being torn in half, because half or more than half of the time, that middle manager is being told, just show me the money, show me the results, show me the production, show me the sales, whatever their particular area is. And yet, their people are saying, show me your heart, make us feel at home in all the ways you just described. And I think that tears middle managers apart. And the only way to put those two halves back together is what you talked about, being tactical and strategic. To say, okay, tactically, my job is to deliver results. Strategically, to get those results, I have to create the conditions where my people can thrive. And I think, our job is to support those middle managers while they find a way to be strategic about the conditions, long-term view. What conditions will allow people to be different and still work together? And they still have to hold the short-term goal of getting results. And I just want to, like, my heart goes out to all of you middle managers out there, because you are truly holding this world together, and you don't always get thanked for it.
Yeah, and it's really challenging, to manage this and manage the power plays, manage the politics, manage the other ghosts in the organization that may counter work with you, and even manage your inner voices and inner fears that may block you actually from understanding the game and being present with what you need to bring as an impact towards your organization, your people, and so it's a massive.
What a lovely way to wrap this up, Sharaf. I love the fact that you're saying these systems that we're leading are many layers of system. There's my internal system that I'm also the leader of, and it's, as you say, full of its own ghosts. Then there's the ghosts that are flying around inside my team. Then there's the ghosts that are flying around in my organization, and beyond that, my country and my region of the world and my world as a whole. So the good thing about systemic leadership is that the job won't get done. We won't run out of work. The challenging thing is it takes a lot of courage and quite a bit of skill.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for wrapping this in an amazing, closure. So, Mish, now that we are, this is our third episode, and I know that that maybe until the end of the year we'll have some vacations and this stuff, and we may come back in January. How would you like to present what you are doing these days to to our audience, maybe to learn more about your services and what you're doing these days? Yeah.
The sort of 2 or 3 things that I'm particularly busy with. And the one is this thing of, well, the 2 branches are coaching systemic leaders, both as individuals. And I found that's grown during the pandemic, more individual leaders really battling with mental health issues, with personal life issues, and with pivoting their businesses issues. So lots of coaching of individual leaders and their teams. And that I just want to put a shout out to say, we can coach your team even if it's virtual. We can do that. It works remarkably well. And then the kind of little twinkle in my eye is looking a little bit more at the personal aspect of what it is to be a person in the world and a leader in the world. And particularly, I've had a lot of experiences through recovering from prostate cancer that have really got me thinking about what it is to be a male leader in the world and how to bring my masculinity in a way that's actually helpful, given that there's a lot of Me Too movements and so on looking at the damage caused by masculinity. So that's just a twinkle in my eye at the moment. But leadership for individuals, leadership for teams, and some of the personal growth are my big areas.
Well, amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Mish. And this is your contacts, enterprisecoach.co.za. And I believe that you're available for the whole world, right? Not only in South Africa.
Yes, particularly in these pandemic times,
Yeah.
working virtually, travel when it's allowed, but I can travel like we're doing right now anytime, and I love it. And I do work really in Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas all the time, and I love it.
Yeah, and I've seen you here in Egypt. This is the first time we met. So in a way,
yes,
I know
I'm
that.
dying to come back to Egypt. I was talking to a mutual friend in Cairo this morning, and he showed me he was going out to catch a car to go to work, and he just had kept his video on, and he showed me the street he lives in. I was like, oh, I want to be there.
Yeah, welcome. Please do that.
Thank you so much for connecting us and for connecting us with people interested in systemic leadership, and really blessings to you and a good closing out to the year.
Yeah, thank you, Mish. I really appreciate your time, your generosity, and everything that you participated in this session and the previous ones too. Thank you for that. Bless you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Have a great, Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.